So what have we said so far? First thing we've talked about is that calling and commitment are two sides of the same coin. Again, I'm willing to be proven wrong, but I think that's a fairly good conclusion to draw. If one is called to something, one will be committed to it. Secondly, I believe calling and commitment implies a personal God, especially the calling part. A personal God enters into the affairs of humankind and says, I've designated Joan to do X. I've designated Bill to do Y. And now Joan and Bill have a decision to make. How am I going to follow through with that? What am I going to do with that sense of calling at this point? That's the thing about calling. They don't just sit there. They don't just abide. I'm called to do X without ever doing it, without ever giving expression to it. I play guitar, and if I have a musical gift, what little I have, it has to be given some kind of expression, right? So if I say I have a calling to something, there has to be some expression to that. If I say I'm a teacher and I never teach, are you a teacher, right? If I say that I'm a mechanic, which I am not, anything but, my calling is not to work on cars. I can change the oil, but that's about it. That's the limit of my gift as it relates to doing mechanical things on a car. The calling is something that has to be walked out in some way. Otherwise, those that come alongside would say, you're not called to that. If Jesus, for example, just says, today this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing, I'm the Messiah, and there's no evidence to support that, Jesus dies in complete anonymity. But because of that sense of calling, Jesus moves forward. You and I are the same way. I do what I do out of a sense of calling, but I had to walk through the steps to get there. And when we're in school, that's what we're doing. That's the expression of our calling. I was always very anxious, so I always wanted to get to it and get to the pulpit or get to the classroom or whatever. But there's that stage of preparation that goes with calling, and that's how one demonstrates one's commitment to one's calling. They walk through the stages to prepare to do the thing they feel called to do. The calling is the glory part. It's easy to talk about calling. It's easy to talk about leadership. The guts of it, the difficulty of it, is to actually do it. And that's where the commitment part is the gore part. So when I think of calling and commitment, I think of glory and gore. Glory is the calling part. That's the part that gets us all excited. And we probably need that to be able to follow through in some senses and some dimensions. But the commitment part, that's where it can get kind of rough. That's where you're studying. That's where you are putting in those shifts. That's when you are swallowing your pride when you've made a mistake. That's when you're swallowing your tongue when someone says something to you that is more than critical. It's destructive, right? Again, I talk about my wife and her experiences in nursing. She's had people, at their worst, say terrible things to her, critical things that made me. In fact, fortunately, she doesn't tell me a lot of them because she knows how I will react. Things that made me just, go ballistic. I want to find this guy. You can't talk to my wife like that. But that's part of what it means to do what she's called to do. And it is a calling. It's been hard, it's been difficult, it's been wonderful, and that's the thing about calling and commitment. It's wonderful and scary at the same time. So, I think about, her career, nursing. I think about when she was in nursing school, and they thought that maybe she would make $20,000 to $21,000. Nursing pays a lot more now than when Sue started. And of course, it was another part of the country, so there's that as well. But it's got to be more than a paycheck. It's got to be more than just the financial end getting you up in the morning. Because if that's all it is, then all these other things that we've talked about, compassion, in addition to calling and commitment today, compassion comes to mind, suffering, hope, all of those things. That paycheck is not enough to ingrain those dimensions into your life. And it's just not enough. What has to be there? In my view, it's the kind of calling and commitment that says, all right, be it done to me as you intend. It's, I'll pay any price. I'll study as long as I need to study. I will do the shifts I need to do. I will read what I need to read. I will learn what I need to learn. And it's not glorious at midnight on a Thursday when you're studying and you've got, family commitments and work commitments and commitments and commitments and commitments. But it's what you do in those secret places that demonstrate your commitment, because then when you get into a situation where all of that learning has to come together for the sake of someone else and their health and their vitality and their thriving, that's where all of that calling and commitment come together. And why we need people in so many different fields, especially in these professional serving fields, to pay the price that they should pay, that they need to pay for the sake of others. And that's what you do when you serve. You do things for other people. And that calling and that commitment can be tested. Stand true. Hang tough. Keep going. Keep going. When you think you can't keep going a little bit more. When people offend you, maybe think about the words of Jesus. Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. Keep going. Calling and commitment. Obviously, it means a lot to me. It's very personal to me. Hopefully, these words help you think about that in relation to religion, theology, spirituality, ethics. Doing the right thing. Just to talk about ethics for a moment. Doing the right thing when everything in your being says, like Jesus, right? If this cup could pass from me, that's what I do. Nevertheless, I'm going to do the right thing because it is the right thing and because I am committed to my calling. Talk to you next week.